This is Heartrepreneur Radio, maximizing your personal and business results by leading with your heart. With your host, Terri Levine. Listen every week as Terri tackles the topics that will help you become a successful heart-centered entrepreneur. Be sure to read the blog posts at www.heartrepreneur.com/blog. Come back often and add this show to your favorite RSS feed or subscribe in iTunes. You can also follow Terri on Twitter at MentorTerri and on Facebook.com/Heartrepreneur Terri Levine. And now here's Terri.
Hello and welcome to Heartrepreneur Radio and TV show with Terri Levine. I'm your co-host, Velma Gallant, and I'm excited to have you here today. You can connect with Terri, me, and other like-minded heart-based owners in the Heartrepreneurs with Terri Levine Facebook group. Go check it out. And of course, make sure you like our show, and we always appreciate those 5-star reviews. Again, I'm going to start today's show off with a quote. The word accounting comes from the word accountability. If you're going to be rich, you need to be accountable for your money. And that quote's by Robert Kiyosaki. And like always, I like to have our quote be relevant for today's show guest. And our show topic today is how to make smart accounting decisions without doing any accounting. And I got to tell you, I like that idea. Our special guest this week is Cassmer Ward. Cassmer Ward is a serial entrepreneur, business owner, chartered public accountant, speaker, and author with a passion for developing educational platforms that apply real-world case studies to business school concepts. Cassmer has recently released his new book called How Much Does It Cost to Make a Donut, which delivers accounting knowledge in a series of entertaining and educational short stories. Welcome to the show, Cassmer.
Thank you for having me.
Did I say your name right?
Cassmer, that is correct. And you can call me Cass.
Cass, got it. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So I have to tell you, I love the idea of this topic because while growing up, I was excellent at math and actually did think of going into accounting. I didn't, and I'm really glad. It's probably not the best thing to tell you, but so I love the idea of creating a different context around accounting, that it becomes something that is relevant, important, but not painful.
Exactly. And that was my purpose to, in trying to deliver that information.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about, I want to hear about your book first, because the title of the book really caught my attention. I like donuts. Most people like donuts. And so I'd really love to hear, I want to hear how you came up with the idea for the title before we even get into the book.
Well, it's funny. It kind of goes back to the concept of what you had mentioned earlier about how you were good at math. You thought you might like accounting. You kind of looked at it and it scared you away. I really built the whole case study scenario on this from my experiences based on my classroom experience and teaching at Queen's University. One of the things I will shamefully admit, but this goes all the way back to middle school and high school, is I did poorly in history. And I'm talking like C's, D's, poorly in history. And I never liked it. I never enjoyed it. I don't know why. I wish I could tell you why I did so poorly. However, I still feel that same way. But if there's a historical documentary on Netflix for 20 hours, I will watch the whole thing in one weekend. And I really was starting to wonder, why do I hate history, but all I'm watching are historical documentaries, the subject that I hate? And I really realized at that point that it wasn't ever about the material. It was just how it was being presented. And with a lot of educational purposes, we teach concepts and we teach exercises. So here's a list of things you need to know. Repeat them back, repeat them back, repeat them back, repeat them back. And the really good students can do that and regurgitate it. And then they're done with it. And they do well in the class. I realized that after watching all these historical documentaries, I was telling my kids and my friends and my family all these historical stories. And they were like, wow, you're some kind of historical buff. And I'm like, no, I just watch a lot of TV. I listen to a lot of stories. I am not into it that much. And I figured, why not try that with accounting concepts? The accounting concepts I was teaching were nothing out of the ordinary. I'd love to tell you I had some secret accounting information and I was telling them the real deal, but I wasn't. I was teaching the same accounting concepts that every other accounting professor was teaching them. However, I started relaying them to real world business scenarios. I've worked as a fractional CFO for the past 13 years, started up several businesses, and just telling them the stories of when I got to a decision point or horrible decisions I made that related to accounting. I mean, the class enjoyed it. And they retained the information. So I thought, why not build the curriculum on one story, which was the story of a partner and I that started a donut company.
So you actually started a donut company?
We did. It was actually a former employee of mine. She was on a leadership team with me for a medical device company. And after we left that company, she wanted to start up a donut company. And she's like, I want it to be artisanal donuts, this very special craft, high concept donut. And mind you, this is 8 years ago before donuts were the thing they are now. And she said, would you help me? Like, will you at least just put a financial model together so I could see what it would take to start this business? And I put the financial model together and we had some conversations and she said, would you want to be involved in this? And honestly, I got excited. Who doesn't like donuts? And so I got involved with the business. And it really, that in and of itself became a whole case study. And the case study itself was peppered with all kinds of different stories that reinforced every one of these concepts. So that was my narrative. I just had to apply the information and the concepts to that story. And however, while my story isn't the greatest story ever told when it came to donuts, every concept, while it related to the donut story, was reinforced with other industries, from marketing agencies to construction companies to manufacturing companies. And it just was reinforced over and over so people could say, oh, this isn't just to start a donut company. It doesn't matter what type of company it is. This is what I need to know before I start creating a budget.
So it's what it sounds like. You pulled in from a couple of different industries so that when somebody goes through this information, they might find something that they can directly relate to and see how it directly relates to themselves.
Yes, exactly. And actually, here was the elephant in the room that I have to deal with in the classroom, with clients, with the readers of this book. The title of the book is How Much Does It Cost to Make a Donut? And Other Questions That Make Us Hate Accounting. And that's the elephant in the room, is most people hate accounting and they shy away from it. And they whether or not they value it, that's a whole other show. We could go into that at some other point, but they know that it needs to be done. And
Right.
Their understanding of it just gets muddled down with all of these different concepts and practices, and an overgeneralization of what they think accounting is. You know, the first thing people will say is, oh, I have an accountant. Okay, well, what does your accountant do? They do my taxes. Okay, well, tax accounting is completely different from the accounting you're going to use to run your business. Does that mean tax accounting doesn't have value? No, it has a lot of value. But there are other parts of accounting that you need to understand and how you can make decisions using accounting.
Okay, I get it. So yeah, I think a lot of us think of, I keep track of my books so that I can pay my taxes, and that's the whole concept of it. But what you're saying is there's actually more to it, and there's more value to it, so they can walk away with making valuable decisions inside of their business.
Right. And that's the other thing is we all want to think our decisions are valuable and we want to make the best, most valuable decision. But we don't know what we're making a decision about. And really, going back to the tax scenario, your tax accountant, they're trying to show that you have the lowest amount of income, so you have the least amount of tax liability. I like that. You like that. Anybody paying taxes likes that. when you're showing the financials to your partners or your shareholders or to the other owners, you want to show as much profit as you possibly can. So how can accounting be grouped in these two different scenarios where you're doing two different things? And then the other thing is, where is the in-between space? Where am I making money? How am I making money? For years and years, I'd have clients come to me and say, every single project I work on is profitable. I charge $1,000. It only costs me $500 to do it. I make $500 a job. How am I losing money? But they're only looking at what the job or the project costs. They're not looking at all their advertising costs. They're not looking at their overhead, their rent, and all of those things. And then when you start putting that in perspective, you can say, oh, so actually in order to become profitable, I have to do 13 jobs just to cover all of that. Everything after that, I'm making $500 a job.
Ah, okay. Okay. So that's speaking to how much does it cost to make a donut? Because you're thinking, when I'm thinking about a donut, I'm thinking about, the cost of the materials and all of that kind of stuff. It might not be including that other stuff in there, which we probably should be.
Exactly. And really to make business decisions. So sometimes we can make money by selling our product by itself, but everything that runs in the background, so we can sell that one donut, that one project, that one contract, all of that comes with a cost behind it, and it's advertising. It is rent on the building. And that would be another great question. Do we want to include a fraction of the rent in the cost of our donut? Well, that depends. How are we going to make our decision? Are we making enough donuts just to make rent? Or are we going to pay rent no matter what? And usually 9 times out of 10, rent's due when rent's due.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what that cost is in a donut. So we can kind of put that aside and say rent's $5,000. Until we've made a $5,000 profit from selling X amount of donuts, we're in the hole. We're not making money at that point. And it's
Right.
organizing the information so it jumps out at you. Not so, you look at your financial statements saying, oh, let's see here, this is wrong, or I don't understand that. And really, it's kind of cathartic, this book. A lot of the concepts behind the book are based on years and years of accounting of people saying, these numbers are wrong. And early in my career, I was like, oh my gosh, these numbers are wrong. I made an error. I got to go back. And I'd redo the work 2, 3, 4 times. The numbers were the numbers. What they were looking to pull out of the numbers, well, they couldn't see that. And I had to learn to have them ask me the real questions of, what are you trying to figure out? Are you trying to figure out the cost of your product? Are you trying to figure out the margin of your product? Do you want to see line items, whether it's direct materials, whether it's direct labor, whether it is overhead? And that's kind of where the whole concept behind it was, the numbers aren't wrong. We've just got to pull the numbers that are useful to us.
Right. So when you're working with your clients, it is getting that understanding of what's the information that's going to make sense to them, and what's the information that allows them to make the decisions they want to be making.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So how do we make smart accounting decisions without doing any accounting?
So here's the thing, and that really goes to our general understanding of accounting. Now, here's the great thing about accounting. Accountants have a general stereotype. They're very uptight and, by the rules and very straightforward. And that's why we trust accountants. Number one, they're handling our money. So the last thing you want is a funny accountant or, a little bit too casual accountant. You're trusting them with the money of your company. So therefore you want to know that they're taking everything serious. Number two, with the accountants, they follow a set of rules. So going back to what I mentioned before, that these numbers are wrong, the way they categorize and the way they display the information is hundreds upon hundreds of generally accepted rules that all accountants have learned in school, learned in training programs on how to present that information. And it's not wrong. We can say those numbers are wrong, but it's not wrong. But it's not all the information we want. So when we, and I say we accountants, put out all of that information, sometimes we're just overloading you, you know? It's no different than taking your car to the shop and say, there's a problem with the engine or the car's not running. Well, that could be one of 100 different things. Right. What are we trying to figure out? What are we zeroing out? You know, is it low on oil? Does it need a new battery? Does, you know, is it something major? Is it something minor? And really, it's no different than that mechanic has to talk to me, since I know nothing about cars, to say, what do you need to know? What's frustrating you about these numbers? And where can you make the most value? I'll tell you, the best reports I've ever created, managers have said, this is what I kind of would like. And they write it on a napkin or a scrap piece of paper and say, can you do this? And here's the big if. If you've been collecting this information in an accounting system, we can get that information for you, no problem. If you've been collecting this accounting information with receipts in a shoebox, which is the stereotype of the person that hates accounting, well, now we've got to compile all that data. Now we have to do all of that. And there's a cost-benefit analysis of, do we just wait and have a shoebox of receipts and figure it all out later? Or do we just bite the bullet and start compiling all the information so when we need to make those big decisions, it's at our fingertips?
Right, right. So
does that answer your question?
It does. What I'm hearing is that your intention is to take some of that fear out of accounting so that people can get over the hurdle and not have it collecting in a shoebox, and know that when the information is in there, they can actually get the information they need out of it, that it's actually going to be meaningful to them.
Right. So here, let's even break that down more. When you need accounting information to make a decision, you have to feel empowered to just ask the questions of what you need to know. I want to know how much our product is selling for, and I want to know how much it costs. Therefore, that's all I want to know. Well, the costs seem a little bit high. Now I want a breakdown of those costs. Is it materials? Is it the labor? And now you can start zeroing in on the things that you can affect. If you sign a lease for 5 years for an office building and it's $5,000 a month, pulling up the rent expense and lease month after month to say, how does this figure into things? That's a waste of your time. There's nothing you can do with that. You've signed the lease. You have to do it over and over. So you think of all of those contracts, all of those expenses that are kind of just fixed out there. It's a waste of time. And I have had clients. I've had clients spend 3 to 4 hours on the phone with their phone provider to get the best deal on their phone coverage. And I'll be honest, in some cases, they've saved $50 a month or $100 a month. That's great. We love to save it. The money they could have just billed out for the hours they spent renegotiating a phone contract, they would have made that back. You know, they would have covered what they were saving on the phone for 2 years based on what they could have billed out. So it's things like that where people they want to do something that's impactful. So they pick these things like, oh, we'll just move to a new building. We'll save money on rent. Well, they forget that it costs $10,000 to move all your equipment. They just start scattering all over the financial statements to just make little pings here and there. By taking that fear out, saying, no, let's not waste our time. Where can we make money? Let's work on these 3 to 4 things right off the bat.
I like that. That actually simplifies some things. What it does for me is I'm not going to worry about this. I'm not going to sweat the small stuff.
Yes.
Right. So that I can put my focus and attention on the things that are really going to have the biggest impact on growing my business.
Right. And that's the other thing. Sometimes it's helping you identify the small things. $5,000 a month for rent for some companies, that's a lot. So I'm not going to say that that's the small stuff, but it's nothing you can do at that point. So we can just be mad at ourselves that we've signed this lease for so long. we've got to figure out until that lease is up and we can actually move. Let's spend the time and effort on where we can make more money. And the other hard part of that is it's usually not through cost cutting. It's investing in new ways to bring in more business. It's investing in sales. It's investing in marketing. And that's a whole other world. I wish I could share some information on that. All I know is this: marketing and sales are extremely important. The second thing I know is I know nothing about that. And figuring out if I go out to do some marketing for myself, I don't know what works and doesn't. So therefore, I have to go out and hire people to do that for me, whether it's my own business or my client's business. Is I need the world, or not the entire world, a certain segment of the world, to know what I'm selling, where I'm at, what the value is, and drive them to my site, whether it's a website or it's my store.
Well, and so what I hear from that is we want to do the same thing when it comes to our accounting practices, is make sure that we have the people who are in there to do the job effectively. And again, have a way of communicating with them, have that line of communication open with them so that I'm getting the information that I need and they know what information I need.
Right, exactly. And not only that, accountants love to talk. They love to tell you what they know. The business managers, they need to just know what they need to know. And sometimes they really don't know what they need to know. So that conversation has to happen to say, what can I get you? What will you be able to make decisions on today and tomorrow that will have an effect, rather than what net income is? We want lots of net income. I mean, that's all of our goal.
Well,
how do we get that?
How many times have new business people thought about, well, maybe I should be taking a how to read financials course, and some of them, their eyes roll into the back of their head.
Right.
And then it's kind of like that sticking point. Whereas what I'm hearing is we can actually, if we build a good relationship with our accounting people, we can use their knowledge and again, have that back and forth conversation so that I know what I need.
Exactly. So here's a really good example to encapsulate that. I had one client that I went to go work for, and they're like, well, it's that time of month. It's time to do the accounting recap. And I was like, oh, excellent. So I was taking lead since I was their CFO for this contract. And I went in there and I looked at the calendar. I was like, hey, there's a typo. You have 4 hours for the accounting and financial update. They're like, oh no, every month we talk about accounting and financials for 4 hours. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to do this. This sounds painful, not only for me, but for anybody listening to me. So we went in there, and it was really what you just said. It was somebody had taken a course on understanding financial statements, and they wanted to be a part of a meeting and tear down every single line and have a conversation about it every single month. And I told them, this is a waste of all of your time. What do you want to know every single day? And, one manager's like, well, I want to know how much, inventory is coming in on a day-to-day basis. Another wanted to know, I want to know the time period between when we get an order and when it ships out goes. One other person wanted to know, I want to know what our cost per unit is. Well, we started preparing these reports daily in some cases, but let's say weekly. Mm-hmm. Everybody had the information that they were wanting. It required little to no conversation, sometimes some follow-up. And by the time the next month came and it was time for a financial review to look at the income statement and balance sheet, it was a 15-minute meeting. It was a 15-minute conversation of, I know exactly what all of these are. Okay. And we had 3 hours and 45 minutes to ourselves that day.
Now that's a win.
Yes.
That's definitely a win. So our conversation has flowed really well, and I haven't taken the opportunity to share how our listeners can actually get a hold of you, find your information. What's the best way for our listeners to find you?
The best way everybody could find me is through www.cassmerward.com. That's CASSMERWARD. terrilevine.com. And from there, you can hear all of the shenanigans I'm up to. I do work as a fractional CFO with numerous companies throughout numerous industries. I also have a book, How Much Does It Cost to Make a Donut? And I also have taken a whole series of interviews that I have filmed for the entrepreneurship class I teach in the MBA program at Queen's University. And I've made those free to the public. So there are great stories from entrepreneurs all the way from multi-billion-dollar, retired entrepreneurs all the way to startup entrepreneurs looking for their first $200,000 angel investing group and everything in between.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's really awesome. So just because, I know what a fractional CFO is, but not all of our listeners are going to know what that is. What is a fractional CFO? Okay.
Well, based on my experience with accounting, one moment, you got me a little choked up when I get to talk about the CFO. I do get excited, but really, so everybody wants that accounting professional in their business, but really a true CFO is somebody that is at the management table. They are with the leadership team of the company, and they're not in the books, they're not in the details, they're applying how the accounting and finance information can actually be integrated in with operations, marketing, sales, human resources, everything in between. So where a fractional CFO comes, CFOs can cost anywhere from $100,000 to $1 million, depending on the size of the company. But some companies don't need a full-time one. And the circumstances can vary. There are companies I've worked with that are less than $1 million in revenue and some that were up to 25 million that still did not need a full-time CFO. So I go in, I work with their accounting teams, but then I play that leadership liaison to make sure that those processes are functioning with the company's strategy and implementation to build value for the owners.
Okay, so you're like, I like the word liaison. So you're basically the person that says, management team, what do you need to know? Accounting team, this is what they need to know, so that you can help and be part of the decision-making of that organization.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I think you're getting this. So you mentioned that you have a lot of programs available, and available for anybody to come and be a part of. What's the value of jumping into that stuff?
So the programs that I have, I do a lot of seminars. I get called out to companies, sometimes just for a broad general audience. Sometimes it's industry specific. But I do go work with in my seminars and talk about teaching accounting to non-finance managers. So people who aren't familiar with accounting and finance and really just want to know just enough to be dangerous.
Oh, I like that.
Other seminars I work in are, breaking down, various accounting concepts to accounting teams so they can look at their information differently. And I actually do quite a bit of strategy work because a lot of companies have great departments. They have a great sales and marketing and accounting team, but they don't know how to put them together. And none of them know what the general strategy of the company is. So I do a lot of work with strategy. And those are some of the programs that, I'll go in and work with companies over the course of, the year. Outside of those programs, I do teach managerial accounting and I teach entrepreneurship. So a lot of my online content that I teach online, I offer after I've run it through the class, I make it available to everyone. I would love to say, hey, I've got these interviews. I'd love to sell them to everybody. But there are these entrepreneur stories that everybody needs to hear. And when I started my own company, the number of people that came out to help me and share their stories or point me in the right directions or tell me not to make this mistake. Well, I feel now I've collected all of that in a bottle. And now I'm like, hey, everybody, this is what they did for me. Let's let them do it for you as well.
Awesome. So I'm a small business owner. I'm a new entrepreneur. What should I be tapping into first when I go to your website?
If you're a new entrepreneur, if you're looking for that, I'll be honest, the best way to learn about entrepreneurship is just to go to the video series. It's called Influencing Entrepreneurs, and just listen to these stories. I mean, you have stories you've got stories of this company that just hired several people, and they go to introduce them to their biggest client. And in that meeting, that client tells them, we're going a different way. And you hear these struggles of entrepreneurs that were like, that was the moment we thought it was all over. And that was 8 years ago. So you hear all of those things. You hear of the breakthroughs when the first investor came through. So it's inspirational, and it's real life case studies without anybody mentioning any textbook jargon. It's everything that's in the textbook in action.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. So I just want to remind everybody it's you're going to have to do it for me again. CassmerWard.com.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. CassmerWard.com. And you're on a bunch of social media sites and stuff like that. People connect to you that way as well.
They can connect to me through Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and anything else I'm missing. YouTube as well.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for your time today, Cassmer. I really appreciate it. It's given me a different perspective of accounting, that it's not necessarily as dull and boring as I thought it would be. It's actually something super valuable that is there to support me to expand and grow my business going forward. Like it's a tool that is very valuable for me to be a part of, rather than just shuffling it off into the corner and handing my stuff over so I get my taxes paid.
And that's the first step.
Awesome. So thank you everyone for coming and listening to our show. I truly appreciate your time, and I hope you found value in our time with Cassmer today. And I want to invite you once again to check out the Facebook group, Heartrepreneurs with Terri Levine. And if you found value in this show, please hit the like button or whatever it is that's available to you, and leave us with a 5-star review. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Heartrepreneur Radio, maximizing your personal and business results by leading with your heart, with your host, Terri Levine. This show is produced every week for your enjoyment and education. To make sure you never miss a single show, add us to your favorite RSS feed or subscribe in iTunes. You can also read Terri's latest blog posts at www.heartrepreneur.com/blog, or follow Terri on Twitter at MentorTerri, and on Facebook.com/Heartrepreneur Terri Levine. Your questions and comments are always welcome and appreciated. Send them to Terri on either Facebook or Twitter. Thank you for listening.